Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fifth. We're almost halfway through of the Impact Toolkits program. Um, for those of you who haven't been to any of these before, where have you been? This is number five of it's 10 in total. The first one was Robin and I talking about the purpose behind this pilot project. This is the first time we've ever done this, the logic behind the topics we've chosen, and the fact that we want your feedback and that it's part of a conversation. This has been created because of a need that's been outlined at the University of Bristol, but it's being hosted through the Aspect platform, and it's available as a toolkit series for Shape academics across the country. We've actually got a couple of international people signed up to this as well, which is random and brilliant. And it's all about toolkits, and it's not going to teach you how to create your toolkit. It's going to give you ideas and inspiration and examples of the tools you can use to build your toolkit. So we've talked about Canva, we've talked about infographics, we've talked about the power of the phone in your pocket to create wonderful videos and imagery. And it's basically facilitated by experts. My job is just to be the host. And the idea is you come away with some nuggets, some plans, some momentum. It makes things feel less daunting. So even on the Canva one, where 50% of you on the quiz said that we've used Canva, it's really great to hear from someone who uses it all the time about what better looks like and how to use these tools, because I find them like rabbit holes because you can do so many things on them. Also being focused, I think it's one of the key things here. And everything that we're doing is on the Impact Toolkits program platform. I will share the link for that if you're not already signed up. So we'll have this recording, we'll have clips around very pertinent pieces. We'll also have links to some of the tools that Ben's going to talk about, their demos. So lots of additional resources there. And we also want to hear from you. So this is a pilot. So if there's a topic that we're not talking about, let us know. If there's something that you'd like us to expand upon, let us know. That's me. I'm Lucy Payne. I like to just, go quickly over this bit. I am your host. I'm your facilitator. I've spent the last 10 years helping individuals take their ventures forward. And it could be a project, it could be a concept, it could be a community, it could be commercialization, it could be any of those flavors. I spent 5 years at Sussex Innovation Centre down on the beautiful Downs in Brighton. I now live in Bath and I work with universities, all four universities here, but also I work at TechSpark, which is the Bristol Bath Swindon Wiltshire tech community, as well as being entrepreneur in residence at the University of Bath. So I'm helping people on their journeys all the time. And all of the sessions we're running in this toolkit are valuable to everyone I've ever met because they all have this, how do I get my message out there? Um, Housekeeping, we're running this as a Zoom webinar, so the chat is not open. Please ask your questions in the Q&A, and Ben and I will keep an eye on those as we go through, and we'll answer them in the moment when we can. If we get to a natural pause, I will pick up any questions that haven't been answered, but we'll do it in real time. And if you do send a message in the chat, it just comes to us, just because we want to make sure it's really focused and a valuable recording to be watched forward. So today we're going to be talking about websites, quick and easy, more advanced, what to ask for, what to prepare, what to know. I at Sussex helped a lot with academic commercialization websites, and they were very baby, simple shop fronts, generally in Wix or Weebly and these other free tools, because it was just the purpose was just to prove the project exists. It might have a very simple call to action, but projects evolve, requirements for websites evolve. Ben's going to talk us through the minefield and give us some clarity about what good looks like. And then next week, Robin will be talking about examples of toolkits and bringing all these pieces together. And so we've got interactive tools, loco, no code. I shall put all these outlines on the website so you can see those. We won't go into great detail on those today because we're going to jump straight over to Ben. And websites, I think a lot of people find them quite daunting. It feels really complicated. It used to be to build a website, you had to be a dev. And yeah, I used to find we couldn't build websites. We now can, as individuals, non-techies, actually build pretty decent websites. Ben, tell me how.
Hi, thanks for that, Lucy. Yeah, hi, I'm Ben Coleman. I've been producing websites for over 20 odd years now, so I've seen lots of different kind of ways of doing things and that sort of thing. Um, these days I run a consultancy called B Team, and we specialize in digital design and production for non-profits and good causes. I'm an author as well. Well, I've written one book. I'm not planning to write anymore. I wrote a book about prototyping, which we'll cover a bit in this in this webinar. Um, I've worked with quite a wide range of clients over the years. You can see some of them here. So there's non-profits and charities. We've done a lot of work with institutions communicating academic research, and then also communicating data and charities and helping visitor attractions as well. So Bristol Museums is someone I work with as well, and the Wave. If you're local to Bristol, you'll know those two. So yes, here's what we're going to talk about today. So I've done the intro. I'm going to take you through the web design process because that seems like a good way to kind of like go about things. And then after that, I've got some tips and further information around a few other subjects which sort of cut across everything. Um, so let's get started. Um, as Lucy said, if you've got questions, please add them to the Q&A function as we go. Um, Lucy will probably triage them and then raise them and interrupt me to answer them. If you've got any questions which aren't answered, the last slide's got my contact information. So if you do have any questions, I'm happy to kind of field questions by email as well. Yeah, I'm not sure how long this is going to take. We'll go through a lot of stuff. It's going to be recorded, so if you have to disappear or we go over the hour, you will be able to access it later, later on, so you can watch it back again. We'll also share this slide deck, and in this deck are lots of links to external assets and images and resources that you can use as well. So you'll be able to click through the deck as well. Hopefully it will make sense without me narrating it. So let's get started. So we're going to talk about the design process, and there's probably kind of two things, two approaches you're considering in terms of how you're going to, develop a website. So as Lucy mentioned, there's tools out there, website building tools, which allow you, without any coding skills, to put together websites. So there's things like WordPress and Squarespace and Wix and Weebly, I think Lucy mentioned. And generally those work by having having an interface where you can build a layout and add different types of content to it, like images and video. They usually come with some designs that you can select from. In fact, there's thousands available, so you can choose a design to suit you and get something up and running pretty quickly. They usually probably have a free trial, but they usually cost a monthly fee, and then that scales in terms of the complexity of the site and the functionality you want in it, or it might scale according to how many web views you have, how many visits you have. The second option is using a freelance designer or developer, which is usually just one person who will produce a website for you, or a web agency who will have different people doing different tasks, different specialists to help you along the process and produce your website. It's likely that budget will dictate which approach you take. With a website builder tool, you can put something together fairly quickly on your own time. As soon as you involve a freelance designer, then there's costs associated with that, and a web agency is more expensive than a freelancer. The design process, though, sort of applies to both. So if you're going about this, your own way, then the things I'm going to tell you about will help you with that process. And yeah, it's worth going through the steps. And equally, the design process will give you a bit of an idea of what to expect if you engage a freelance designer or developer or a web agency. So yes. The first step of the design process is working out what you need. So you should start by defining what you need a website to do. That's for you as an entity or organization or service, whatever it is, what the thing you're creating the website to represent. And when you think about that, you need to think about, what audiences you're going to try to attract to the website, what they're there for. And, particularly kind of think about what tasks they're trying to complete, what their motivations are. This is useful because, if you're looking to engage a freelancer or an agency, you should just come up with a design brief, which states, what you're trying to achieve with this website. that's the basis that they will create a proposal. Um, that's also worthwhile going through if you're just self-building, just so you've got a statement of intent you can look back on to say, okay, this is what I want a website to do. In situations with my clients that are in academic institutions, it's useful for funding applications as well to have an idea as to what the website needs to do so you can put some funding in. And as I said, yeah, useful if you're self-creating too. There's an exercise we do with clients which helps expose this, and it's a collaborative exercise. We go through this sort of organization purpose exercise where we go through these quadrants, these four sort of questions. So we start with what you do. So, what is your service? What is your product? What does it do? And then you can think about, who's that for? What audiences is this? Are you catering for? Who's going to use this service or product? And then there's the why. Like, why are you doing it? Why is this product or service useful or relevant or needed? And then often we have the fourth one, which is a sort of competitive advantage. One is thinking about, okay, why is it better? Why is your service better than others? Why is your product better than others? I'll show you a quick example. So this is from one of our clients. It's from a biomedical research centre based in Exeter as part of the NIHR, which is the research wing of the NHS. So we've got what do you do, who for, why, and why we do it better. So looking into this, the obvious thing is they conduct biomedical research. They've got themes. So there's 5 themes which they do that research in. And, the kind of main aim of this is, they want to do the research, but they've got to translate its insights from that research and the outcomes of that research into benefits for patients as quickly as possible. That's their aims. So we've got some more, other ideas here in these post-its. So that sort of captures, what they do. And then we have quite a long list. Looking across, most of my clients, they would have fewer than this list. They have lots of different kind of audiences. So if we're thinking about research into, neurodegeneration, you may have patients and public who have parents or they're caring for people with, neurodegenerative diseases. They may have an interest here. Other researchers will, industry partners will, the NHS will, other biomedical research centres around the country and the planet will. So here we're just listing the audiences to think about them. And then there's the whys, why they're doing it. The ultimate goal here is to try and to improve outcomes for patients, trying to improve the translation of research into improvements and that sort of thing. And then in terms of why they do it better, there's something about them being in the Southwest and an aging population helps in some cases, certainly with neurodegeneration. The quality of the research, they are world leading. So, there's a quality aspect there. Same with the patient and public involvement and engagement. So this has given us a good picture of our client organization and what we need to represent, straight off the bat. So yeah, that's quite good for working out what you might need to represent in a website. As I mentioned before, the second bit is your audiences. So you've covered, you as an entity, organization. Now you need to think about the people you're trying to engage. In all the work we do, and it's fairly common now, people should be at the heart of the design process. It should be, human-centered design, user-centered design. And that's how you create good products, by identifying the needs of your audiences and then designing for those needs. We've started by listing our audiences in that first exercise in the who for piece. And now what we want to do is gather, what you know about them. And in its simplest form, we do that in 2 parts. So one is, asking, what do they do? Where do they work? What are they doing? Why are they interested in whatever your product or service is? And then following on from that, so that gives us some context as to go, okay, this person is in this setting doing this thing. You might make assumptions around, what sort of device they're using. They could be office based, and therefore, you think they're going to be using a PC with a big monitor, or they may not be. They might be, on the move and using a mobile device. That's good information for us when we're designing the website. The second part we want to know about them is what tasks they're trying to achieve and the motivation behind them. We call these key tasks. They're also known as user stories. I think I've got an example here. Yes, so this is again from, did I have this? Yeah, so this is again from, oh no, don't close the presentation. Sorry, 2 secs.
Gotta have at least one tech fail. That's just the rules.
Yeah, get
I
out of
was
the
just going
way
to say how much
early.
I love Miro because we all love whiteboarding and post-it notes. But the fact that Miro, you can do it so collaboratively if you're not all in the same place.
Yes, actually, that is something well worth mentioning. So we do all of our collaborative work in Miro. There's
It
other
also
things that,
means you're not taking a photograph of the wall with the post-it notes because that's the other issue with doing it in person. And you can you can go mad, color code it, connect it. It's a great tool.
yeah, there's other ones available. So there's Jamboard as well, and I
Yeah.
think basically every provider's got a whiteboard tool, and
I'm always looking for good things that came out of COVID. And all these products did exist, but we suddenly got really into using them, so they evolved really well, didn't they?
yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, so yes, personas. So you can see here, this is an example from Exeter Biomedical Research Centre. So the purpose diagram. This is one of their audiences. It's the patient and public. So, this can include patient groups. They're interested in how they can get involved in research. And there also might be a public interest in finding out information about a specific theme, and the themes are aligned to, health conditions. Um, so that's the sort of background, that they can sort of be anywhere if they've got an interest. Um, and then our user stories or key tasks, follow the format of I want to do X so I can achieve Y. So, in the first one, I'm interested in finding out about information about a specific research topic or theme because I have a related illness. Um, or I want to keep it up to date on research and hear if there's any potential future breakthroughs, or sign up to a patient group so I can participate. So these are good examples of user stories, and we can use them to design with to think about, okay, well, do we have a page that deals with this? When we get further down the line, do we have, content on a page, a design on a page, or functionality on a page, which allows people to complete these key tasks? Um, Sometimes you might find, in fact, fairly commonly, we find one of those audiences um, we don't know much about, or they're so important we want to know more about them. Um, so in that case, you can conduct some user research, and this will seem quite lightweight and less scientific if you're used to doing proper kind of rigorous academic research. But there's generally two types we do. So and it's sort of dependent on number and availability of participants. So the first is a survey. Usually we'd do that online. Um, we'd kind of try and design it so that we can collect data from as many people as possible, and also analyze it easily. So, questions should be multiple choice or a Likert scale, kind of, disagree, strongly disagree, neutral, that sort of thing. So it's easily sort of able to be analyzed later in sort of a chart form or something like that. There's lots of online tools to help you with that sort of thing, particularly with the analysis as well. Um, and then the other one we do a lot of, which is one-to-one interviews. So these are sort of semi-structured interviews. We aim for about 5 people from each audience. So, we'd interview 5 members of the public with specific health conditions. So, and for these, we create a theme guide, but as I said, they're sort of semi-structured. So you sort of have questions and ideas of where you want to take the conversation, but it's quite free-flowing and natural. So, you know, um, you can go through it and wind up talking about things you didn't expect or want to explore things you didn't think you'd hear about. Um, you should record the interview, maybe have it transcribed. There's lots of services online which will do that. I've been using one called Otter, at the moment, and that's quite good. It's got a nice AI tool for summarizing transcripts and pulling out data that does a pretty good job from what I've seen so far.
I've used Fireflies. There are some great tools, and
Hmm.
say Otter's great as well. And they're amazing if you do a whole selection of interviews through them, and you can suddenly you can ask it then in its AI to create narratives and ask it questions.
Yeah, it's good.
It's really cool.
Um, and then, yeah, the aim of the user research really is just to get more information about the audience and what they might want to be doing when on your website. And then also what they might do, after they've been to your website. So usually we sort of try and structure interviews about inputs and outputs. So what inputs do they need in their work? What information do they take from your website or other places? And then the outputs is, what do they create after that? And that's quite important if you're thinking about, say you're producing research and the ultimate aim is to influence policy. Quite often, that is going to need you to be influencing an MP, or high level non-elected government official. It's not likely they're going to be visiting the website. It's going to be someone else that's working for them that needs to produce the information to give them. So if you know that, then you can make sure that you can design the content and information of a website to be easily digestible, or some key points that are easy to copy and paste out or take away, or graphics to illustrate things that can be put into a briefing note to have that influence that you want. Um, yeah. Um, Once you've got this sort of idea of, okay, here's my organization, this is what it needs to do, or product or service, and here are audiences, and they've got key tasks, you can start building an information architecture, which is sort of a fancy name for a sitemap. Um, you can see on this slide, there's a pretty basic one. It just lists the pages that are in a site. So there's a dashboard. That's probably the home page. There's a careers page, a privacy policy, some services, a bit about the company, the team, and a contact form. So that's pretty basic. It gives you an idea of what pages are in the site. So you have a first idea of, what sort of structure you need. On top of that, you can add more detail. So the key things we want to know really are what content goes onto that page. So if you think about the previous example, our team, you're going to need the people that make up that team. You might want to break those into separate teams. So you've got like a leadership team, or a sales team or something like that. Um, so you have content. You've also got functionality. So again, on the previous one, we had a contact form. So you need form functionality. So that's important to know. So when you're looking at, suitable tools to build a website, or you're telling, a website professional what needs to go into it, there has to be a web form. And then we also get into using design templates. So templates are repeatable designs that can be used across a website. So we tend not to design every page uniquely, just because it's very expensive way to kind of create websites. So you tend to use templates. So every blog post uses the same template. You might have a standard page template which you use for your about section and your team page and things like that. Yeah, so those are things it's good to kind of include in a sitemap or information architecture. Um, you can see an example here. I'm going to zoom into one, which I've got here. So, in here we've got a home page, and then we've got a template number, and we've got the yellow boxes telling us what goes on that page. So, for example, this is for it's actually a health intervention, healthcare intervention study. So there's about the study, which is called Ready. And so here's our things that we need to be in this page. So we need to talk to people about the research, explain what it is. We need to highlight that the people that are involved. Something we always find actually in research projects, or when we're trying to represent research, is people are very interested in the people behind it. So yeah, it's worth bearing in mind. Um, a question users had was, who's this funded by? So we need to state it's funded by the NIHR, and then an acknowledgement. So when the study's written about, we've got a copy and pastable kind of acknowledgement to use in when people reference it. Um, we've got other pages here. We're talking about what's in the briefing, making sure there's a downloadable version. So you can see, whilst we've got these pages, we're being quite clear about, what's on those pages. And one of the pieces in here is we've got this decision-making tool. So here we're talking about the functionality on this page. We know we have an interactive tool for practice managers to use that will help them establish what the impact of adding a paramedic to their team may be. So that's what the research is about. What happens when you put a paramedic in a GP surgery, and how best to do that. So we've got some specifics about that tool. Nothing too detailed because we don't know what the tool is yet, but we think that's going to be a useful thing, or we've developed a user need. One of the key tasks we established was, if I'm someone running a GP practice, how can I work out how to do this best? And what we worked out was it depends on the complexity of the cases they're seeing and the level of integration. So are they part-time or full-time? So based on that, we thought, okay, we can create a tool to satisfy those needs. So you can see this is, covers each page, and we've got details about what's on those pages at this point. There's a few other things which are useful to kind of think about here, and I'll just show you those quickly. So they're user flow diagrams, task modeling, and customer journey models. So a user flow diagram is a flow chart. Basically, you can see you've got the traditional flow chart shapes of processes and decisions and that sort of thing. So this example, someone starts here, they log in, there's a decision as to have they got the right login. If yes, then they're in an account. If no, then we need to reset their password. So this is good for visualizing the steps someone will go through on a website to do something. And this is a fairly typical sort of e-commerce thing. It's like they log in, they pay the credit card bill, that sort of thing. Or no, they've forgotten their login details, so we need to help them reset and recover their password. So that's a user flow diagram. It's good for working out, okay, if I've got these pages in my IA, do I have the pages that will match the user flow diagram? Like, do I have a login page? Do I have a reset password page? Are these mapped out? If they're not, you can add to it and refine it. I've done this in the wrong order, but this one is user journey mapping, or also known as customer journey mapping. The idea here is we're trying to map different stages of a customer's experience in terms of coming into contact with your product or service. I'll go into the Miro for this so I can zoom in. So along the top, we have the stage. So awareness is, at what point they become aware of your product or service. And how does that happen? How do they see it or hear of it, or what have you? Arrival is, when they land on your product or service, assuming it's a website or an app. And then actions is what they do when they're there. And follow up is, what can you do afterwards? Like, how can you get them back? What's useful to them at a later date. So that's the sort of journey stages we're considering, and those can vary depending on the product. And then we have sort of scenarios. So there's stages. So we've got front stage, which is the theatre analogy of this is what is at the public end of the website. You can see what goes on the front stage. And we've got backstage, which is non-publicly visible, is what we need the website to be doing at this point. So this might be recording data or sending it to other services, that sort of thing. And we have pain points and opportunities. So pain points are predicting where people might come into a tricky situation where they've forgotten a login, or any problems that might arise that we need to think about when we're considering this user's journey or experience. And then opportunities is places where we've got an opportunity to delight a user, make them happy, or complete a task in a really good way. Or just go a bit above and beyond and deliver a good experience that's a good thing. And into this you can add these post-its, so you're sort of saying, okay, well, In this case, the website is going to be shown at a live session or webinar. They'll be provided by a link. It might be by email. They will arrive on the website. They'll nominate their GP practice. This is for a different thing to do with GPs. So we're collecting some data about this person when they land, and then they're going to look at some stuff around blood tests and different health conditions. So we're looking at different kind of things they might want to do. They might want to watch a video. They might want to find general information about the study. So these sorts of things we're sort of considering, how we're going to solve their key task at this stage. And then following up, in this case, there'd be interviews because, that's the nature of the thing. So we've got two so far. So one is a user flow, which is just a flow chart, and this one is a bit more in depth and considers the sort of end and start of a user's sort of experience of your product or service. The last one is useful. So this is task modeling, which is modeling a very specific task, obviously. That might be just a part of a product or service. So but it might be quite interactive or quite detailed, and we really want to dig into it. So let's have a look at this one. So this is for an app we developed years ago, which was a short story app called MacGuffin. And the unique thing about it was people could submit short stories, but you could also log in, find short stories, and you can switch between audio and text seamlessly. So you could be on the bus reading it and then get off the bus, switch it to audio and walk to work, but carry on listening to the story. So this task model is all about someone's sign-up experience and like how they find stories. So we can see, they start on the left, a link is shared by a friend, they sign up, they're asking, how do I find stories? And they're looking at search, they're looking at genres and authors and editors' picks. We've got ticks here, which are a bit like the kind of opportunities or happy moments that can happen. And then in this case, our user enters the search term sci-fi, they select a story, they listen to it. And then we wanted to have this thing, social tagging involved in it. So people could, add tags to different stories, and the community would tag stories to create taxonomies. And the pain point here is, users can't see the point. We need to kind of motivate her to do this. So it's good to kind of work out, in this journey, what we've got to do at what point. So this is just about someone signing up and selecting a story and listening to it and tagging it. That's all. There's other features within this product, so we could do multiple task models for different features. But just for this one and this really kind of key journey we had to get right, it was good to do a task model. So those are all sort of useful as another step from the information architectural sitemap to sort of work out a user's journey and validate it. So yes, so once you've got this idea of what pages and content and functionality might make up your website, you're ready to start sketching and wireframing. We love sketching. It's really useful. It's really good to do collaboratively as well. You can see some examples here. The one on the left, one of our clients turned out to have a previous life as an artist, so she produced this really kind of nice, detailed kind of picture. But it doesn't need to be like that. It can be really simple, boxes, lines, images, or just simply text-based and saying, well, these are the things I want to put on the web page. These are all useful. And there's some shorthand around sketching. We try to encourage people to kind of keep it kind of loose. The idea is you sketch quickly and test ideas really fast. So, you can draw boxes for page elements. Images are boxes with a cross in. Titles can be a wiggly line. Text can be straight lines, The important thing is you get those sort of out and then, have a team create these sketches, put them up on the wall, discuss them, use something like dot voting to choose features you like. It's a good way to get things out of being a sitemap and into being something visual really quickly. So well worth doing. You can then refine these into things called wireframes. You can see a picture on the right. of one we did for the Exeter BRC. And again, these are grayscale. There's no design in here, particularly. We're looking at, content and positioning and hierarchy and things like that. What features are in this? Because we'll give this to a designer, or we'll take it into design, or use it to try and find a theme in a website builder that represents what we want to have on the page. Essentially, though, they are just higher fidelity sketches. There's good tools for using this. Figma is something we use all the time. Sketch is another sort of Figma-based tool. There's one called Mockups as well, which is free. But you can use what you have access to. Clients have put together PowerPoint slides with boxes and text on, which represent websites really well. And they can be evolved into prototypes as well. So yeah. I should have some examples. So yes, this is the one you can see in the web page. So you can see, it's this is the home page. So you can see boxes and text and that sort of thing. And we've just got lots of these for each page. You can see them all here. And we're just interested in, what the title of the page is. We've started thinking about navigation, which is important. What goes on each page, those sorts of things. And again, these are really good for curating and testing and sharing them amongst your team to create consensus. I'll not go too much into tools, and there's some links here. They all offer free trials. They're all worth trying. Figma is probably the most popular one at the moment, but yeah, like I said, use what's at hand. Okay, and then from these, you can prototype things. I'm a huge fan of this because it's really, really useful, valuable thing to do in the process. And the whole point of a prototype is try to create something as quickly and as efficiently as possible to prove or disprove whether it's a good idea or not, to test it. Yeah, there's some benefits here. So it acts as a sense check while you're creating it, like whilst I'm doing wireframes or whilst I'm building a prototype. When I do things, I'll make changes or have ideas about how I can link to other things or bring other content or functionality into it. It's really useful to have an artifact you can use and click through. So that, that's what it should be, is a clickable prototype. I'll take you through what that sort of means and different ways of doing that in a minute. But you can share it with people to get their input. And that can be with people in your team or trusted friends and associates, or it can be testing with users. So if you've got audiences with key tasks, you can find some of those audiences and say, okay, can you go and find this? Here's a prototype, watch them use it, observe them, and if they can find it, great. If they can't, find the spot where they tripped up and then adjust the design there. You can also use it with real content and real data if you're using a website prototype. And I'll show you an example of that and why that's used in a bit. So tools here. So again, we've got Figma and Sketch, the tools I mentioned for wireframing. They also have prototyping features. I'll show you sort of roughly how those work. If you've just got sketches or images that you've done in a graphics package, you can import them into a tool called Marvel and create a prototype there by drawing hotspots and linking between those images. So you're mimicking clickable, navigation elements that move you through those images. With PowerPoint, you can link elements between slides. With HTML, you can pick up HTML frameworks which have the design there. You need a little bit of skill around adding links, but it's not, you're not coding from scratch. And then there's also the website builders. So, Squarespace, Wix, Weebly, WordPress, all those things, you can develop a prototype with those really quickly. And it's worth doing. So looking at some examples, this is the edit mode of the wireframes I showed you earlier. So these are pictures of the wireframes. And here I'm going to create some hotspots. So I can draw a hotspot around the about page, and then I can link that to a page. I can then do that for, say, news, and I'll find a news listing. There we are. and do that. And if I play this, you can see I've got these hotspots now that appear, and now I can navigate. So I've created a clickable prototype. I can share this with a colleague or users and watch them use it. And can they get to the things I want them to get? When you share it, this is sort of what it looks like. So this is a tool we developed for the Met Office to test what people understand by their weather icons, which was a really interesting project. You can click through it. You know, we had we had a form about the person, gender, age, location, and then this was the testing tool. So when we show them an icon, what is it? And then someone nominates one of these options and goes to the next question. And we're demonstrating the question options here. So do we have a multiple choice? Do we have a slider? Multiple choice again with a something else. What does this mean? Um, slider, this sort of thing. So this was really good to demonstrate to them, like, this is what we think we're going to build. These are the question options. Do you think this is going to be a good thing to build? Do we need to adjust it? And we iterated through this until we were happy. So that was a really good prototype, and that was built with Marvel and using images from a graphics package. This is one we've done this year for a charity called Pledge Ball. So you can see this and this one. So the premise of Pledge Ball is that you might be attending a sporting event and you will want to pledge against some sustainability goals. The whole idea being you can harness 50,000 people in a football stadium, you can make quite an impact. So for this, we wanted to demonstrate, how someone could click through it and select things so they can use tabs to select clubs or fixtures. And it was really useful for us just to kind of go through this process and iterate this prototype with our client to work out, is this the right thing? Can someone get through this? And can they get through to what we want them to do, which is make a pledge. And then this one, so this is a website, it's based on a framework, so it's a bunch of web page templates and CSS that's already predefined. So, it has button styles and that sort of thing. There's a popular one called Bootstrap, which is out there. And we connected this to a series of pages and used it to test with students at an English learning centre in London. So they can go through and select what type of learner they are, what they want to do, and they can say where their English is and where they want to study. And then it takes them through to a course listing. So we're able to test this with a bunch of students and refine it. Last one. So this is an example of using real data. It was to power the course search for New College Swindon. And so to do that, we put their real course directory into the website. So we had real data to test with. We did this with a WordPress site. So someone can use this filter to say, well, I want to look at GCSEs, and I am, I'm interested in art and design. And then they can use the search to return them, what GCSEs are to do with art and design. And we were testing this faceted search here at the top. So yeah, those are examples of prototypes. They're all linked to through here, so you'll be able to have a look at them later. Okay, content. Content's a tricky one, and it's possibly less intuitive writing for the web if you come from a sort of academic background. People read differently on the web than they do on paper. They scan pages in an F-shaped pattern, sort of down the left and going across, and they're looking for titles and things that are related to what they're thinking and they want to see. They don't read much of the web pages. It's a case of scanning, finding something, and reading that. So it's a bit different. You want to be concise and to the point. I would front load sentences and titles with the subject that you're talking about. I've included some links here, which are useful.
I was going to say you might want to get some help because I mean,
Mm,
whatever sort of business it is, whether as I say, what with tech founders, you're too close to your project, you're too close to whatever it is you're building. And sometimes you are the worst person to explain it because you know too much. So it's really good to work with somebody, even if it's just a colleague, to kind of get what your 1 minute pitch is or what the key points are or what the 10 words are and practice it on somebody. And some of you, if you've done those research insight pieces that you mentioned, Ben, and sometimes that those give you the words, but don't. I think my key message is don't worry if this is quite hard because it is quite hard to actually get that content, that language right. And again, not maybe what you want to say, but what your audience needs to hear. So there are loads of nuances. I think that's definitely a do some reading, but don't do ask for help for sure on this bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You might find that your institutions, if you're part of a academic institution, they might have some style guides around writing, which will be helpful. Um, what else? I had something else to say on that. I can't remember what it was there. No, it's gone.
Sorry, I threw
Might come
you on
back to
that,
me.
didn't I? I'm sorry.
No, no, it's I thought I had another slide, but yeah, it might turn up later
It'll come back to you. It'll be fine.
on. Um, okay, image libraries. Try to avoid cheesy stock photography. There's a link here to a really nice list of image libraries, mostly royalty free, meaning you don't have to pay for them, which show, which are a collective of different reasons. Um, there's one which is specialized in, black and brown people. There's ones which are specialized in showing kind of more elderly people. Like you've
And try
got
and
to,
collect your own images. Obviously, our last
yeah.
session was about using your phone. I mean, not every project is very visually rich, but actually, Ben, as you rightly said, people are fascinated about the people behind the projects. So even if your output isn't initially desperately visual, you can have pictures around where you're based and what you're doing and who you're helping. It could be your
Hmm.
community that are the pictures or the people if you haven't got a product that's desperately exciting. Because a lot of people especially in tech, if they have an app, the app is very boring. You don't want all the images on your website to be of the app. But if the
Hmm.
app helps people do a thing, have pictures of the thing. So
Yeah.
I think also be really authentic. So if you can, I would recommend getting your own images and making them really authentic, good quality, and real. So I think a lot of sites you have to start with stock, don't you? Because it just gets you, it means you don't have blank pages.
Yeah, and this list it will be helpful for that. It's not too stocky, too cheesy. Like people can tell these days if you just use stock.
Yeah. There's
And
this one guy, isn't there? This one white-haired guy who's in everything.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah,
But
you wind up
make it part of your
recognizing people
project
on
to capture
websites which just
imagery.
looks a
Yeah,
bit
you
weird.
do. Yeah. Make it
Um,
part of your development strategy to think about images. If you run an event, that's always great for images. Like your project starting a
yes,
conversation, anything with energy. And yeah, we've got amazing cameras in our pockets, but there's also great editing software, isn't it? See, I try and be confident and think from the beginning of if I'm going to create anything. So even like the Canva images we were talking about in the first webinar, all the three, like the infographics, they all look better with good imagery.
yes, it's true. And everyone's got a smartphone these days, which is more than capable of taking good
And a
images.
lot of
So
universities have got brilliant media departments.
mm,
Go and borrow a student, get some other people in the institution involved.
that's true. Okay, super. So yeah, like video. Yeah, if you're using video, want to include video, use YouTube, or Vimeo is another one. YouTube's probably what we use most of. The good thing about that is it uses Google's infrastructure to deliver the file to the user. So you're using that ecosystem, which is a lot faster and self-hosting it. And also it's in YouTube, so people can discover it. Naturally it's searching in YouTube or by a search engine. um, I should mention there are controls there to have it not listed there, so you can make it non-discoverable if you only want to show it on your website. That's fine. Um, if possible, make sure it's captioned so people can have subtitles. Um, yeah. Um, this relates to content. So this is the slide. This is my missing slide. And it relates to what Lucy said is like, simplifying content is not the same as dumbing it down. It's hard to simplify content. So, have other people help, test it as well. Um, there's some there's some tools here. So there's a readability testing tool which you can put a web page into and it will give you a score, or you can copy paste text into it. And it gives you some different indexes to measure the readability. So one is around reading age, and that sort of thing. So, it's worth doing that. The first word is a website you can put content into, and it's good at giving you some tips on what to simplify. And the thing I use a lot of is a thing called Hemingway. It's an app you can type into, but it also does writing analysis whilst you're typing. I use this a lot when I wrote the book because I've got a tendency to type really, really long sentences, which I was unaware of, but it's very good for doing that. And yeah, I'd advocate for using that specifically for writing for the web as well. Right, we've got through to design, and I've got 20 slides left in 10 minutes, so we'll see. At this point, it sort of diverges. So, but assuming we've got a sitemap, so we know what pages we're on our website, and we've got some wireframes or some sketches that that has what is on those pages. The next step is working on the visual design, its appearance. There's two ways to tackle this, and this relates to the way you're approaching doing the website. So if you're doing it yourself, or if you're using a freelancer or a web agency, so by yourself, you'll be using a website builder like WordPress.com or Squarespace or Wix or Weebly. And with them, you're able to pick a theme. So they have literally thousands of designs for websites which do different things, have different colors. And so when you're going into that, you know sort of what you want on the pages. So, bear in mind what sort of content and functionality you want on those pages, and a design should have those elements. But you're now also looking at things like fonts and color, and how you want to represent the brand of your product or service. So you can shop around and try themes. With all of these, say you choose a theme, you add some content, and then you're not sure about the theme, or it doesn't have something you want, you can switch it to another theme and the content will persist in the main. So with a WordPress site, if you add a few pages, switch the theme, that content should still be there. It'll just look different because you changed the theme and the design is different. If you're using a freelancer or an agency, they will produce the designs for you. And so they'll take whatever you've done at first, like a sitemap or wireframes, all of that's useful. They may go through the process from the start and do their own information architecture and wireframes and design and develop it. But if you've done some stuff up front, that's all useful to them. Something to be aware of, if you do give them wireframes and they start designing, they will change the layout, when they get some creativity in there and they're starting using color and changing the layout. So, don't expect it just to be them coloring in your wireframes. And when you start this process, we'd always look for some, ask the question of like, what's your brand? And you'll either have one or you won't. I'm going to go into brand in a minute, but there's that brand identity. So that consists of logo, colors, text, fonts at a minimum. There's loads more that goes into brands, but as a minimum for designing, that's what we'd need. And then two other things which are really useful to have is websites you like the look of or the way they work. So it's really useful to be able to show working examples of functionality that you want to have something similar to, or you like the way a website is designed, or its color palette, or the way it talks about itself. That's all really useful. It's also good to show what you don't like. So, I want to avoid this sort of thing, or the way they use these colors or these fonts, or you present things you dislike so they don't go near that. And what you're doing is introducing constraints, which really help designers. In terms of a brand, so this is what I mentioned in terms of logo. So this is the B team, my things brand. So we've got a B, which is just the icon, and we've got the name, which is B and team. In terms of logo examples, so logos commonly have that sort of thing of a motif or an icon and the name. The icon's the tricky bit because that can be infinitely creative. You'll see here there's one called Greenhouse, and that's what's known as a name style. So if you don't have a logo, the quickest and easiest way to develop one is to use a name style, which is the name of your product or service, and then you look at different fonts and colors to work out what its name style should be. In terms of colors, you need a color palette. This is a very basic one, which is from the B Team website. We've got primary color, which is the orange, and we have some complementary colors. Um, have I got something to help you with that? Yes, I'll cover that later. So yeah, there's your color palette. And then typography, what fonts you want to use. It's good to sort of define that. And that makes up the minimum brand identity we need for a website design. Um, yeah, so here's a useful link. So this tool, colors, it just generates colors. So here's a color palette that complements itself. Um, and you can just flick through these to go, actually, it's that one. I really like that one. Let's use that. Um, there's another one which works by, if you already have a color that you like, it will generate color palettes based on that. So it will take your primary color and it will generate complementary colors based on a few principles. So one is a gradient, one is something that matches, you want to develop a gradient from blue to purple, something which has different kind of sides of the color wheel. So that blue and the orange are on opposite sides of the color spectrum. So it's quite useful for developing these, if you need to develop colors. For fonts, Google Fonts is your friend. There's lots here. You can filter by, what types. So, sans serif, we could filter by. We could look at different languages, different styles, and all of these are free. So that'll give you a good idea in terms of kind of like working out. So say you needed to create a logo, you could go here, work out a color palette. You could go here and say, okay, well, I need to find a font for my product. And actually, I really do quite like that one. So we'll use that. Yeah, so there's some links there to help you with generating colors and looking at fonts. Okay, development. So development is the building of the website. If you're using a website builder, it's you working within that builder to create pages, and generally you would add layouts. So you might have a 3-column layout, and then you put different things in each cell in that through those 3 columns, and you can move these things around and create your pages as you go. If you're doing that in something like Squarespace or Wix or Weebly, for consistency, it's a good idea. If you get one page looking the way you want it to be and you want others to look similar to that, clone that page, and then you've got the system set up for you, and it'll make it more consistent and a bit easier to do. Within that, you can add all sorts of sort of modules. So you'd be able to put in a gallery, say, or a quote or an image or video. It'll allow you to do all that and control the layout. Yeah, if you're working with a freelancer or agency, this process is going to be pretty quiet for you because they will take everything that you've got. So you've got your website structure, your pages, your content, and your design, and they're going to build it. So they'll go away and they'll only come back to you if you've got a question or when they're ready to show you what they've built. And they'll generally do that with a test website, sometimes known as a dev website. They might ask you to enter content, or they might enter it themselves. And they'll be using the content management system to build this website, add the content to this website. At some stage, they'll produce it and say, can you review it? And so you'll be responsible for kind of like looking at doing some testing. Like they should do testing too, but you will need to test it. And so, yeah, when we talk about testing, what we mean is, or things you need to look at when you're testing. So if you have a website, test it across different browsers. So Chrome is the most prevalent. Safari is prevalent on iOS, Apple devices. Edge is prevalent when Microsoft is the system of choice, and Firefox as well. It's not so bad these days, but a decade ago, these all used to behave differently and render website code differently. So you needed to check across all of them to make sure you had a consistent layout, or users got a good experience across all of them. This also applies to mobiles. So Safari and Chrome on Apple devices, Chrome on Android devices. You can use emulators for this, but it's best to use, phones, borrow a friend's phone if you don't have an Apple phone. Um, Something I've left out on this is accessibility. So there's a thing called the Wave Aim toolbar. I'll stick that as another slide in here, and that's to test accessibility. So we're talking about color contrast for people with vision impairments. It's mostly what people talk about when they talk about accessibility. It covers lots more than that though, and like folks who have dyslexia, for example, will use assistive technology to view websites. Lots of people do. So it's well worth paying attention to and making sure it's done correctly. But this tool will just launch. In fact, it's not going to launch in Google Chrome because we're presenting. Let me see, where else can I do it? I shouldn't do this, but it's on my own website. Yes, so here it gives you a readout, so you can see where there's some errors, and you can do this and send a report to your web agency and say, okay, these needs to be fixed. I realise we're at time, but I'm just going to carry on because we're at the launch stage. So now you've got a website, your content is in, the design is done, you can go live. There's a few things you need to do that apart from switching the site on and telling people about it. So, um, so yes, one is cookie consent. So, with GDPR, you need to have a cookie consent option for users, particularly if you're using tracking software and that sort of thing. So they'll consent to it and it will load, or they won't consent to it and it won't load and they won't be tracked. You will probably want to know what's happening on your website, what people are doing, how many what pages they're visiting, that sort of thing. Google Analytics is the most prevalent tracking software. It's free. It's fairly straightforward to add to a website, and there's lots of guides out there to help you do that. You should you should share your sitemap with Google, and that will help it get indexed in Google so people can find it. And then the last thing is publicize it. Put it out there, put it on LinkedIn, so Twitter, Facebook, wherever your audiences are that you want to reach, tell them about it and get them going there. And the last bit is, okay, what now? So your website is live. This is really just the beginning. You've gone through this process to get this website out there. You want to keep it up to date. So add regular content via news or updates, run social media campaigns to bring traffic to your website, monitor people's behavior on the website using tracking tools, ask users for feedback. You can have a pop-up feedback form on your site, and that's quite useful, particularly if it's a service. And make improvements, try and iterate things. Okay, that's the design process. So we've gone all the way through from a sitemap through to sketching what it might do to validate ideas and test it with other people. We've designed it, we've possibly prototyped it and tested that with users. We've built it and it's out there. I've got a few more slides about different tips that are related to this. So yeah, the first one is sort of alluded to this earlier, but consider a phased approach. So what I mean by that is if you've got a core part of a product or service you want to get out there, just do that bit. You don't need the news page, you don't need the contact page. It can just be the core of the thing. You can get that out there and get it into the hands of people and get feedback to make it better. This is also known as the MVP approach or minimum viable product. That's quite common in sort of startup land. And again, the primary goal of an MVP is to minimize time and effort wasted by testing how the market reacts to your idea before building a complete product. So it's very much like prototyping. You don't want to spend you want to spend as little time as possible to do this, to get it out there, to see how people react to it. For measuring traffic, it's Google Analytics. It's a bit more complex than most people need. I've got an example here. So this is sort of what you can see, lots of different stuff, how people are getting there. how how they've found you in terms of channels, say organic search or direct traffic, where they are on the planet.
It's a total rabbit hole. I love
Yeah.
analytics, but I would say turn it on at the beginning, even if you don't really
Mm.
need it and it's not going to have a big push behind it, even on your little MVP, have that on so that you can learn from it as you go forward.
Yeah, it's fairly tricky to set up and find exactly what you want. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but there are alternatives. So, this one is something we have on one of our clients' site we're trialing at the moment, and it's free. It does nice things. You want to know about traffic, particularly cycles of traffic. You want to know about what pages have been most visited, these sorts of things, are what, matters to most of our clients. Um, there's stuff around browsers and cities and those sorts of things, or things like landing pages. It's quite interesting.
It
So what
also, for me,
pages?
helps you evaluate whether a page you thought was essential actually ever gets visited.
Yeah, that's true. And we commonly find that in news sections. You'll have evergreen content, which
Yeah.
is always interesting and relevant. You will have content which is definitely not evergreen, that is possibly time bound. A good example is something around an event that's passed, or an announcement that's time bound or chronological. Past that time, you know, it's no longer relevant. You won't get any hits. These can help you know about that. There's another one called Matomo, and then with the website builders like Squarespace or WordPress or Wix, they usually have traffic monitoring options in them already. Um, Cookie consent, yeah, there's loads of options here. I'd advocate for going with a service. Most of them are free to a certain level of visits per month. Um, but yeah, it's the best way to do it, particularly with changes that have been brought in this year from Google. Um, I've listed a load of the options there. There's loads more. And it might be worth, if you're using a website builder or content management system, then it's worth looking at what ones integrate, with those quite nicely. I mentioned sitemaps earlier. So a sitemap is, I don't have an example here, is a list of pages in your website. So it's just these are all the pages in the website. These are all the news pages with the modification date. Okay, so this sitemap is sent to Google. Google knows about it and it sends a robot to look around all those pages and scrape the data to put into its search engines. So when someone searches, they find your website. Um, so yes, that's what I mean by sitemaps. And content management systems. So these are a few that we use and have experience with. They're all free. WordPress. So WordPress is a website builder, but you can also get a self-hosted version where you can custom build things. So we do a lot of work building websites in WordPress with custom themes that we develop from the ground up. It's got a really nice interface for our clients to use to manage their content. There's lots of plugins, so we can add functionality using those. And also there's quite a nice thing in terms of, about 50% of the internet is WordPress. So, if my whole team gets hit by a bus, you can easily find another developer to pick it up and take it over and manage it and maintain it. Wagtail is another one. It's different technology. It uses Python. It's very fast. It's very good. It's very extendable. Craft as well. It's fairly similar to WordPress. Has a lovely interface and lots of plugins and that sort of thing. Um, yeah, so those are three that I'd pay attention to. Um, And there's a slide here about hiring a design agency. I don't have much on this, but this is a pretty good article about if you're looking to um, engage an agency, the sorts of things you need to prepare and what you need to be aware of. It's written from the perspective of a charitable organization, um, but it should apply to you guys as well. And yeah, I've seen a few questions pop up, but
Well, no, we've actually had some really great feedback about maybe going a
yeah,
bit more in
nice.
depth into some of the tools because as quite rightly the person who is anonymous in the outline, but really good point. We went really in depth with Canva and we've covered so much information. This was more of a process rather than a tool
Yep,
session. And I
yep.
think, yeah, the feedback we have is, can we have some, can we, this is a really good taster session now. Can we get into the nuts and bolts? But that's good feedback. I said, this is a pilot. So I really authentically value that feedback because it's we're learning what people need.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily do an hour talk on prototyping or using WordPress or Squarespace or something like that. You
Yeah.
can do a deep dive into those, but I'd encourage you just to try and pick them up as well.
Well, I think
Or
have a play. As we talked about, I've built baby sites in some of the Wix, the Weeblies, the Squarespace. It's satisfying, and as we said, it's a bit like when you go to a hairdresser's, having a picture of what good looks like for you. And you talked about branding, and also brand is how you make someone feel, which goes back in. And all of this stuff really helps me, I think, with building your toolkit because so this toolkit idea, this communication of your project, your conversation you want to start. I found putting a website together really helps you with who you are, what you do, why you do it, who it's
mm,
for, um, what's the most important thing to tell them, when, how to tell them. The website, that whole process really, really pinces you in as to what good looks like. Good enough looks like. That's the other, I like the whole MVP thing is there is like utopia. And then what does good enough look like to
yeah,
move it forward?
perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Thank you
it's
for
never
sharing your
finished.
contact details.
So,
Oh
you
no,
know,
this is it. It isn't finished. It should always be living and breathing because websites that sit there doing nothing are dead. They don't get found, do they?
yeah, exactly.
So that's one of the key things here. So no, thank you all. Ah, thank you, Angeliki. What we're going to do, I'm just going to put my screen up finally with just to make sure that everyone knows what's coming up. The future sessions are in your diary. We've got the next few weeks now, our final sessions. And do keep giving us feedback. I really appreciate the thoughts from the audience as to what they'd like to see. Ben, thank you so much for today.
That's right. It's great. Yeah, enjoyed it. I'm happy to take questions as well. So my email address was on the last slide, but you can put it in any follow-up stuff, Lucy. So yeah, if anyone wants to have a chat about any of these things, I like talking about it. So
It's one of those things is knowing what good looks like because you don't know what you don't know. And as we said, there's a period not that long ago where building websites felt like a dark art.
yeah,
It's
it can be
it's
a bit,
not
and it
anymore.
yeah, and also if you're working with freelancers or agencies, sometimes they aren't that good at communicating kind of what the process or how it works or what's expected.
Yeah. You need
Some
to
of
manage it. You can't just throw it over the fence and expect someone to articulate your project as you see
yeah,
it. They're not
exactly.
mind readers.
Yeah, like quite a lot of the work I do is usually around helping charities in a situation where they have an agency or someone like that helping them and working out how best to kind
So
of
Charlotte's off to design and build her website now. Con Charlotte's got that proactive energy now. This is what we,
good, go
the
for
key
it.
message of today is it's not huge and daunting. It's quick and fun. I had a little play before we came on this call, just looking on Wix, and they had some great academic templates, and you can check out what it looks like on your phone as well as on your desktop. And it's as you say, Ben, those tools aren't they're not sophisticated if you really want an amazingly functioning website. But for day one, getting something together, getting your thoughts out onto a page, it's a great way of doing it. But I also love the sketching, that visualization using Figma, wireframing it.
Yeah.
And I've recently built a website with an agency, and they that Figma piece that we did just moved the project forward.
Yeah, exactly. Like anything visual definitely helps communicate your ideas
Yeah.
and help people understand. And whether that's, your customers or your colleagues or an agency or freelancer, it's very much worth doing.
If you mock something up, you can then go into your next team meeting or something and go, is this in the right order? Because also sometimes it's like when you write something, you kind of jiggle the story around. A website is a story.
Yeah,
You got to make
yeah,
sure you get the right hook. They know
yeah.
what they're signing up for. But anyway, we shall stop talking, Ben. It's been brilliant to do this with you. Thank you everyone for dialing in,
Thanks for having
and
me.
we should put all the assets and the links and the extra videos into the Aspect platform. Let's